Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ben, this is Books with Bengus, and today I'm coming to you with my top 10 books of 2024. So let's get into it. I want to start with some honorable mentions. It was probably the best reading year of my life, so some of these could have easily slotted into my top 10 reads of the last bunch of years. But this year, they're on the outside looking in, and a few rules for my top 10 list. First, I'm going with no rereads. I did a lot of rereading of truly favorite books this year, so that would be really complicated for me to deal with. So no rereads, and I'm trying to limit it to one book per series. So the first book that kind of disqualified, which is Lines of Al Rassan. I know it's a standalone, but I'm counting it in the interconnected kind of European historical fantasy meta series that Kay has done with a lot of his Europe-based books. So that was an astounding read, just a perfect standalone, and was my second Kay read, and just part of my year of discovering Guy Gavriel Kay as my favorite author, or one of them. I'll have to see how it all plays out when I give it some more reflection. But that was tremendous. I read the short story collection Exhalation by Ted Chiang from cover to cover, and some of those award-winning stories in there, I'm glad to see they got a lot of recognition, because the title story Exhalation, the first one, and was pretty long, and then the novella-sized one, Life Cycle of Software Objects, I think that one was utterly captivating. Read it basically in one sitting, and just he was blowing my mind with a lot of these stories, with the cool ideas, but by making these stories so engaging, and I can't wait to see what he comes up with next. And then, another great read was Murder at Spindle Manor by Morgan Stang. This was a one-day read, could not put it down, was so entranced by this fantasy whodunit mystery story. It was a lot of fun. Another one was Forged by Benedict Jacka. This is a late series book in the 12-book Alex Verus urban fantasy series, and a lot of those books in the second half really, really hit for me. And then I think, Disquiet Gods, one from early in the year. That was a continuation in one of my favorite series, Sun Eater. And this was a really solid Sun Eater book, but had a few lulls in the first half maybe, and a sequence in the middle that I might appreciate more on reread, that seems like it's pretty important to the overall series, but a lot of what Rockio continues to do is truly engaging, and cannot wait for the finale of the whole series to come in late this year. Now on to the top 10 though, and these are books that pretty much I had no qualms about any which way. Just perfect 5-star reads for me all the way through. And at number 10, we have Speaking Bones by Ken Liu. So this is the fourth book, the final book in the Dandelion Dynasty series, and I love a big ending. I have definitely a bias towards climaxes of stories and final acts, and just if I've gone on a long journey, if that way things fall out is satisfying, I'll have a really close connection to that final book. And that is the case with Speaking Bones. I'd spent a few thousand pages in this world, these characters already, and the way things played out with some truly fantastic extended battle and action sequences, and I really love what Liu does with developing technology and going into flashbacks before and during action sequences, and showing you how certain technology was discovered or invented, and then how is that going to play out in the battle sequence in the present moment was always really fun and exciting to see. And there were some deep emotional payoffs at the end of this series as well. So this was just a fantastic ending that made my time with the series feel really worthwhile. At number 9, and this could have gone a few different directions, is Brothers in Arms by Lois McMaster Bujold. So I think maybe the 8th or so Vorkosigan book I read this year, and depending on which books you include that are kind of standalones or prequels, you might come upon this sooner if you just read the Miles-focused books in the series. But I really have loved discovering Bujold this year and diving into this series, and basically doing about half of it so far, and I'll probably finish up the second half this year. And this one, it was the first of the Miles books that I think was just firing on all cylinders for me, in the same way that the Cordelia-focused 2 books had been doing. And so this one, I could have gone with Barrayar. I really loved the finale of that kind of duology that starts this off, And also the next book, Mirror Dance, was really awesome, but maybe the last half wasn't as great for me. And so this book, Brothers in Arms, is just the one that I read the quickest. I couldn't put it down. The particular plotting of this, the introduction of a new major character that I think upped the stakes of this series in a lot of ways, for Miles in particular. And I loved the introduction of this character and the conflicts it brought and how it played out and how things went down was just heart-stopping, and so set things up going forward in a really cool way. So yeah, that was probably my favorite for Koskin book, but a bunch of others were right there with it because I've liked everything I've read in this series so far. At number 8 is a new release, one of the few that I actually read from 2024, and that is The Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey. And this was an electric read for me. And if it disappointed some big Expanse fans because it was not The Expanse, I get it, but I felt so refreshed that it was so different from The Expanse. Yet it maintained some of the classic James S.A. Corey voice and storytelling style, this character-focused, just fast-paced, and really tense drama that they will produce, but with an entirely different kind of plot and story. And I connected so deeply with this story, and it involves a kind of galactic spanning war, and it's very heavy on meeting, non-human alien species and beings, and the coming to discover who those are and what they're like, and the overall political situation, and being in the dire straits that our core cast of the ensemble cast is in. I found it so compelling, and I really wished I had book 2 to dive into right then and there. That's the only downside of reading a new release that is so captivating like that. I was left in such suspense, but I probably will enjoy reread because it's not that long, and I want to just head into book 2 fresh on all the details before the next installment. At number 7, one of my great surprises of this year, and this is book 3 from the Empire Assault trilogy. That's The Sword Saint by Khan Igildin. So, read by Kyle, asked if I wanted to buddy read this. I'd never heard of it before, not on my radar, but it's a trilogy that came out just a few years ago, and surprised that I'd never heard of it, and read the whole thing right through in just about 2 weeks. Each of the books is just like 300 pages and change, and it breezes by. It's fast-paced and tense, and this was the finale book, and that the first 2 books were really building towards in a cool way, where there's this East meets West kind of cultural clash between the 2 main city-states that have been set up in this series, but the motley crew at the heart of this book has people from both of those cultures working together, and this series is just so creative, full of energy, full of really great character voice, and full of nuance, and just character depth that you wouldn't necessarily expect once you first meet some of these characters, and a suspenseful plot, one of the craziest, most edge-of-your-seat action sequences I've ever read, with a nighttime raid on this very powerfully fortified army camp, and just a very fun time if you want something that is going to be energizing and fun and not take too long to get through. Yeah, that was just fantastic, and can't wait to reread that whole series again once some of the details have fled and I can just re-experience it. So yeah, great trilogy, Empire Assault. At number 6 is my representative from one of my favorite new series that I've discovered since the last time I made one of these top lists, and that is the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, but the book that I think stands out for me as my favorite of the bunch is book 4, The Gate of the Feral Gods by Matt Dinniman. So I was enjoying my time with the first 3, but it wasn't until book 4 where it seemed like just Dinniman hit his stride with his storytelling approach with this, and just every element was coming together to just provide this perfect story for me that I had absolutely zero criticisms of, like I had here and there for the first few books. And this was just a leveling up for me, and it became so easy to be visualizing what was going on, to know what the characters' goals were and what they had to overcome, and the tension and drama and some of the craziest scenes that I've ever experienced are in this book. And I've actually read the first 6 DCC books 3 times over the course of the last year. 2 times just right in a row at the start of the year, and then once recently in the lead up to reading book 7. And books 5 and 6 are a lot of people's favorites. I think those had a couple of the more impactful emotional moments for sure for me, but book 4 on the whole is just perfect. Just the prime example of a DCC book, honestly, for me. And so I'm going with that one, and I just have such love for the whole series and the high tension and drama and survival stakes that are always present with our very lovable first-person POV protagonist Carl, who's very serious, and then we have his lovable sidekick Princess Donut, and their incredible bond and relationship at the heart of this story, and Princess Donut being such an earnest, honest, and loving character, but who's also kind of there with biting humor and just saying the darndest things. And some of the humor in this really works to break up the incredible tension that is going on throughout. And as someone who is new to Lit RPG and just a lot of things I wasn't sure about going into this, I loved it, adore it. And yeah, the book 7 was great, the new release that a lot of people are probably waiting on for the audio. And if you haven't gotten on board now, it is a great time. Because book 7 is really kind of feels like the end of the first arc of the series, but we only maybe have a few more left. And so these I am going to cherish and probably get the reread bug often with how amazing the audiobooks are as well. So yeah, just one of my great new loves and passions for 2024 is DCC. All right, at number 5 is A Brightness Long Ago by Guy Gavriel Kay. So when I'm thinking about this, it is just a perfect standalone book, and so impactful, written so elegantly, with a tense, suspenseful, engaging plot, incredibly deep POV characters as the main few cast. I'm thinking, how could this not be number 1 on my list? And yeah, I've read so many just perfect books for myself that this has to be this low, but it is just tremendous. This is one of Kay's more recent releases from just a few years ago, and I think it could be a great starting point for Kay. It is not very long. It's one of his shortest books, but he packs so much into this book. There's not a wasted word, and the opening section was just so dramatic and compelling, and then these high-stakes confrontations and conversations that happen, and a horse race sequence. We're set in kind of a Renaissance Italy time, and there is a horse race sequence that is one of my favorite chapters I've ever read. That was just tremendous. And man, when I think back to just how emotionally involved I was with this one at every step along the way, it was just a beautiful book. And so yes, if anyone has already enjoyed Kay, some of his earlier books, the more popular 90s ones, man, do not miss A Brightness Long Ago. Or if you haven't started him, I think this is a really accessible, amazing starting point. All right, at number 4 is Shogun by James Clavell. So I'd actually tried this book a couple of years ago, and I did not love the very first chapter where we're on a ship, and Europeans are on this ship, and there had been a disease that had struck the crew, and they're in a storm. I just didn't get into that first chapter in the style. We hadn't yet gone to Japan. And then I watched the first episode of the show and was blown away by the show and the production and the actors and everything. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. I don't want to miss out on the book in case that ends up being great. And so I went back to the book, gave it a real go, and was so captivated once we got to Japan after that first chapter. And so this was just a huge read. It's so chunky, but that, I think, is to its advantage. It does not rush us through these scenes. It doesn't cover that much time. We linger with scenes and conversations as they play out, and there's no rush to them over these long, long moments, and we get them from different perspectives often. And I found the character drama, the political dramas going on, just captivating. And man, I was so immersed in feudal Japan that I was just felt like I was living there along with Blackthorn and Stranded and trying to learn about this very, very foreign culture that he knew nothing about, and without the ability to communicate with almost everyone. And as I feel like I was on that journey of cultural exchange and language exchange with Blackthorn, and the kind of the interactions at the heart of the book between him and his primary translator Mariko are just provided such a rich center around which all of this larger political drama unfolded. And man, this was amazing. I loved watching the rest of the show once I went back after I finished the book. The show did a great job, but it just does not have the ability to cover as much ground as the book does, and to provide you the internal thoughts, which are a huge part of the richness of this story. And so yeah, you're missing that if you just watch the show. So if you've liked the show, would highly recommend the book, also with incredible narration from Ralph Lister. At number 3 is the first Stephen King read that has really blown me away after just reading a few before that, and that is 11/22/63. And man, this is a big book. I read it like within 2 days. I could not put it down. I was going on walks and listening to it. I was doing immersive reading. There is a lot of character to the actual print text in this book, and with the way that he italicizes and bolds and capitalizes things. And so I was getting a lot from seeing it in print as well as listening with incredible narration. And this story had me emotionally moved in the first chapter. I could not believe how quickly I was drawn in to just the very beginning. And then as we go on this time travel journey, that aspect of it I found so compelling, and almost made me nostalgic for a time that I didn't get to live through, but that felt like it was a very appealing time to be living in the US in 1950s and late 1950s. And there was just I think a lack of cynicism among people at that time that allowed this person from the 21st century to have seen what the present day was like, to then go back, and I was able to feel those emotions of what a relief it was to be back in that time so much, along with our POV character Jake. And man, some of the things that happen were really emotional, including just like a school play and a school dance that our character is a chaperone of. And there are just some memorable sequences, and even without the larger drama of trying to go back and stop the assassination of JFK, it would have been special without that if it was just more slice of life. But that added a lot of drama and tension, especially to the back half of the book. And the ending itself, I was curious how it could possibly stick the landing in a satisfying way, but it did. I got to that final chapter and the final pages and was just amazed at how King was able to wrap it up, and the directions things went at the end were so interesting and cool. But perfect read. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't know how this possibly could not be at the top of my list for the year, but it was somehow. So that was number 3. At number 2 is a book I had an even greater emotional experience with, and that was Assassin's Fate by Robin Hobb. So this spot in the list really goes to the entire Fitz and the Fool trilogy, which was just perfect from beginning to end. And this book, Assassin's Fate, couldn't have had this same impact without the incredible setup of Fool's Assassin and the middle book of Fool's Quest to get us here. So this really goes to the entire trilogy, which had me so moved. There is, of course, there's new characters being introduced in a new subseries after some time has passed, and man, I found the new characters and some returning old ones to be just taking this subseries to the highest level possible of my investment for Robin Hobb and this series. And I was definitely an emotional ball of goo towards the end of this, and just even the beginning portion, I was so tense, so dramatic of how things were going to play out once things were converging. And I really loved the crossovers we got with the Rainwild Chronicles and the Live Ship Trader series. It felt like it united the entire Realm of the Elderling series for me in a very satisfying way. So just a very moving experience there that is going to be so memorable. And yeah, very very special, and the fact that I just unreservedly love this entire last trilogy, I think this big series ends in such an impactful way for me that it shot to the top of my favorite series list, and it's going to compete with some of my previous faves when I come up with my new top series list. So, loved Assassin's Fate, loved the entire last trilogy, and cannot wait for hopefully more books in this world by Robin Hobb. I know she's been working on some, so we'll see if we get them soon. And my favorite read of 2024 is A Song for Arbonne by Guy Gavriel Kay. And this is the one that I had the largest emotional experience with, maybe ever, with a book. And certainly since I think I'd wrapped up the Harry Potter series with the book 7 release, which kind of marked the end of my childhood. But this one, as an adult, I did not know that a book could move me this much anymore, but it did. It wormed its way deep, deep inside my soul as the first ever book I'd read by Guy Gavriel Kay, and I was just entranced by his rhythms and use of language and imagery and the emotional depth of the characters, and caring about this fictional place of Arbonne more than I've cared about any place, real or fictional, I think, and just valuing the culture there and what Kay built. It felt so organic, a culture that cares about love and the arts and music and poetry, and just some of these scenes where the bards or minstrels are singing in a tavern, or just some of the most beautiful scenes, or what people are thinking as they sit by a window or a stairwell. Just the nostalgia and wistfulness it brought up for me hit really close to home, and just had me feeling more alive and more attuned to the world around me, I think, than any other book has made me feel before. And so just was a beautiful reading experience, and just was dramatic and fast paced as well in terms of the political plotting. The convergence that happens towards the end is extremely tense, and man, that just had me so emotional, whether it's characters coming to a new understanding of each other or forgiving each other. Just some beautiful, beautiful moments throughout the book, and one that is so personally memorable for me. So that has become my favorite book of all time. That I can say that without any reservations, and just sing to the rafters my love for A Song for Arbonne, and Guy Gavriel Kay becoming a new favorite author from this past year. So yeah, that was my list of my top books of 2024, the best reading year of my life, discovering so many new cherished favorites and new authors. And so yeah, let me know what you've thought of any of these books or authors. What were some of your favorites from this past year? And I'll catch you later.